Hi, my name is Olivia. I'm an author and a therapist. We just finished up a series on the relationship trust boundary model on how to set and hold relationship boundaries. And I thought it would be really helpful if we jump back over to How to Stop Chasing Rejection and looked at the model that I developed. It's on page 62. That helps us to better understand specific issues we face when we struggle with codependent traits on setting and holding boundaries. So I feel like it's pretty hard for most of us to set and hold boundaries just in general. But when we struggle with codependency, there's like a whole nother level and layer to why it's so hard for us to set and hold boundaries. So you can get this on Amazon.com or on my website, and we're just going to jump right in. So looking at the model, I thought it'd be easier if I just showed you on a paper what the actual model is for the different phases. We're going to identify 6 of them. So 6 different phases that we kind of go through. We just go from one to one to one to one. And this is why boundaries are so complicated when we struggle with codependency. So first thing to understand is that there is the 2 parts, setting and also holding the boundary. So when we struggle with codependency, part of the issue is we don't set the boundary until we are like way past the point of having enough. We're so fed up, we're so over it that we kind of come in with guns blazing, right? So that's the first part of it. We're starting off trying to set the boundary when we're really not thinking clearly. We're not thinking straight. It's very emotional. And then part of what causes us to not be able to hold the boundary is all of this toxic guilt and not understanding what is really our responsibility and what's someone else's responsibility. Because when we have codependency, we tend to fix everybody else's problems, or we insert ourselves into other people's problems to try to fix them. So we're going to dive right in for each one of the phases. And we said there were 6, right? We're going to look at, in that phase, what are we thinking? What are we doing? What other people see us do? And also, what are we feeling? So we're going to start with the first one. So phase 1 is fed up, right? So if you look at the diagram, which you could take a picture of this or pause it, whatever you want to do. If you look at where it starts, it's right here. We start with being fed up. So in the fed up phase, which is the first part of the phase, that occurs when we feel like we've been pushed too far, too much has been asked of us, someone just responded in a way to our help that made us furious, right? So in this phase, what are we doing? We could be screaming, we could be crying, we could be raging. We may say things like, how dare you? You mistake my kindness for weakness. That's enough. You just pushed me too far, right? So we're really like hammering down. We are fed up. Things that we could be thinking, this is enough. I'm sick of this. You're out of your mind, right? What we could be feeling, anger, rage, hurt, and some shock. Like, wow, I've been doing all of this for you all of this time, and now it's this, right? So being really mindful, not everything is going to perfectly exactly apply to you. So you take what you need, leave the rest. But if there are some things that hit home, you may be able to identify, oh, it is a piece of this, but also this. So this is just very general. Okay, so from the I'm fed up phase, when we go into the next part of it, which is right here, now we draw a hard line in the sand, right? So now it's like, this is my iron line and no one's going to move it. In that part of the phase, we can really start to vilify someone and victimize ourselves. So we turn them into like a monster, right? So what we could be doing, we could be attacking their character, right? Anyone who's ever done this, it's like, oh man, why do I do that? So instead of just saying what the issue is or what you would prefer, right? You're doing this, however, I would prefer it if you did this. Instead of doing that, we kind of go straight for the jugular and we attack their character. So we could be saying things like, I don't trust you. This is your fault. I don't want to hear it. Thinking, what a liar. Now I see who you really are. What a fool I've been. I'm done. How could I be so stupid? What a waste of time. What we're feeling, anger, we may actually feel clarity in this phase. Like, ooh, now I see you. Now I see how it really is. And I'm starting to feel like I'm really clear and I can feel even empowered and almost powerful, right? So we kind of almost get up on our high horse when we come to the hard line in the sand phase. So we went from being fed up and now, oh, I see you and this is how it is and this is who you are and this is what you've done to me and here's my line in the sand. And we go really hard at that first part of it. Okay, so, sorry, Kuma's barking, of course. And so is Chelsea. Chelsea kind of gets the, little sweetheart. But anyways, okay. So from the hard line drawn in the sand, we tend to go and, oops, right here, try to recruit other people. We recruit others. So we were fed up, we drew that hard line in the sand, and now we're trying to work on other people to recruit them to our cause. So in that phase, what are we doing? We call someone up, and it's usually someone that's either in the middle or someone that I know is going to back me, right? So it could be someone who you know is going to back you. So you call them up for support. You kind of plead their case to them. You tell them what the other person's been doing, what's been happening to you, and really what we're doing when we do that, even though we still feel empowered when we initially make the call, we're kind of looking for backup. We're kind of looking for validation. Like, yeah, you had to say that. Good for you. You needed to let them know, right? That's kind of what we're hoping for because we're already starting to feel a little shaky with the line we've drawn. Eventually we will be. So that's what we're doing. We're pleading our case. We're looking for approval, looking for backup. What are we thinking? See why I did what I did. See how terrible they are for me. See why I'm not the bad one and they are, right? So we're kind of still making ourselves the innocent victims and the other person is a villain. So we're turning them into a monster as we try to recruit another person. What are we feeling? We may begin to feel some doubt, some anxiety. We start to feel some toxic shame and toxic guilt as well. So we're already doubting ourselves. We're feeling a bit ashamed of how we acted because we probably did act in an unrealistic way or an unhealthy way, dysfunctional way, right? So we're starting to feel a bit guilty for that, but we're trying to convince them. So we need that other person to be a monster so that they can, come in and join our cause and try and help us and save us. So it's really hard for us though, because we are not used to saying how we feel. We're not used to, getting help for what we're going through. We're used to helping someone. We're used to being able to save someone. So this is really uncomfortable. It's really awkward. And it really gets us kind of like doggy paddling, chasing the other person, the person that we're trying to recruit. So once that phase happens, we end up in the self-doubt phase, right? So notice how just a second ago, we were feeling so powerful. We were feeling so clear, so strong that we finally understood it. We knew what needed to happen. So we set that hard line. And just like that, we start to recruit someone and we almost start talking ourselves out of it. As we're trying to talk someone into why we did what we did, on the back end, we're really talking ourselves out of it. So the second we hang up the phone, we are just full blown in self-doubt mode, right? So in this phase, most times what we're doing, you would see us being alone. In the self-doubt phase, we tend to be alone and we're almost paralyzed by fear. It's not funny, but it's awful. It's actually really awful, right? So we're feeling paralyzed by fear, like we really did something wrong. So what are we thinking? I make mistakes too. What if someone cuts me off because I made a mistake? Then I'll deserve it because I did it to someone else, right? I could end up alone too and it'll serve me right. So we start to feel like something bad's going to happen to us and it's going to be our fault because we just told someone no, or we just told someone where the line was. What am I feeling? Fear, toxic guilt, panic, feel like a bad person, and we can feel really alone in this phase. So the other thing to recognize is more often than not, during this phase of the self-doubt, we don't reach out. We're not calling anybody back up. Hey, everything I just told you, I'm really feeling like I messed up. Like, do you think I did? We don't usually do that. We're usually alone and just in our heads, kind of going through these conversations and feeling like, oh, now something's bad going to happen to me and it's going to be my fault because I just did this to someone else, right? So when it comes around and happens to me, it's going to serve me right. These are all the irrational thoughts that go into why it's so hard for us to set and hold boundaries. After this phase, the self-doubt phase, we go into this next one right here, which is backpedaling. So it started with fed up, right? Being fed up. and then recruiting others, then the self-doubt, and now we are full-blown backpedaling mode. So when we are backpedaling, we can call the person we recruited. That's what we tend to do. So now I'm going to go back up here to this person that I tried to recruit, and I'm going to explain to them why I was wrong, right? So in this part of the phase, I'm going to tell them, what am I doing? I'm going to say I over-exaggerated. It's all my fault, right? I'm going to defend the person who trampled on my boundaries, and I'm going to try and show them that I'm the bad guy. I'm going to say things like, I don't know why I got so mad, right? I think it was just because, and then I'm going to have a whole bunch of excuses that I was just mad and not thinking clearly, and that the other person's actually an angel and I'm actually the bad one, right? So what am I thinking? See why I was wrong in what I said. See why they're not bad and that it was me. See how I was just confused. That's okay. And what we want to do is do this because we're worried if the person we vilified, the one we set the boundary with, if they find out, they're really going to hate me. And ultimately, if I have codependency, my bigger fear is then they're going to leave me and it's going to be my fault. I should have never done this, right? I'm having lots of regrets, feeling anxious, panic, pressure, and feeling really eager to make my case, because I'm feeling in that moment, if I can convince the person I just tried to recruit, if I can talk them into believing I was wrong, and I can feel like they understand that and they believe me, that takes my anxiety down. And now I feel like I have a chance at life again, right? So it can feel like everything is just spiraling. It's all going to end poorly for me. It's going to be my fault. This is everything we go through when we try to set a boundary. So we can see how, oh, wow, that's a lot, right? No wonder it's so hard for me to set boundaries when I struggle with codependency. Not only that, but if the person that I tried to recruit, if I did a good enough job convincing them that this person was terrible, right? Well, when I finally backpedal and try to reattach to this person, that important person that I recruited who is a support in my life, if I can't convince them that it was all me and all my fault, I'm worried they're not going to understand when I reconcile with the person who I just tried to convince to them was like the devil, right? So I have to now convince this person that this person over here isn't that bad and that I was confused and just upset and overreacting, so that when I reconcile, I don't also lose them, right? So this is what I'm thinking. This is all part of that model of what we face when we try to set and hold a boundary. So the last part of it, ultimately, we apologize to the person that we try to set the boundary with, and we remove it. So that iron boundary, that line we drew in the sand, at the end of it all, we're going to just go back to the person we set the boundary with, and we're going to remove the boundary. It's okay. You don't have to do that. I know I said that this would happen if you did that. I want you to know that that's not going to happen. You don't have to worry about that, right? So this is the final phase, which is apologize and remove boundary. Until it happens enough times again, we get fed up, and we'll go through the whole thing again. Yay. So in the apologize to that person phase, right, what we're going to be doing is apologize to the person removing the boundary, explaining to them why I was wrong, right? So I'm going to go to them and I'm going to say all the reasons what was going on, all the excuses I have for my behavior, and that wasn't fair to them, right? So I'm apologizing and removing the boundary and saying, just how sorry I am. What am I thinking? What if they don't take me back? What if they don't forgive me? How could I have been so wrong? I'm so sick of my anger. They're so wonderful. I don't deserve them. So now I've turned them into a complete treasure. They're an angel, they're a saint, and all I want is for them to forgive me and take me back. I don't care that they mangled my boundaries, right? What am I feeling? Deep regret, fear, anxiety, dependent on being forgiven. I'm craving relief from this stress. I want them to say they forgive me, because then all my stress is just going to melt away. My anxiety is going to go down with their forgiveness. And then once I apologize and they forgive me, I immediately start to feel safe again. I feel safe and I feel secure in the relationship. So I'm learning, right? Because this cycle feeds itself. So if I go through this a few times, eventually I learned that I can't trust myself. I can't trust how I feel when my boundary's broken. because so many times when I get to over here at this part of the phase, I'm learning, oh, you were wrong. And actually, you better hope everybody can just erase everything you just spent all this time saying, all these cases you've been building, all these lines you've been drawing. You better hope they just forget all of that, or you're going to remain unsafe, right? So then I spend all my time on trying to undo everything it was I just did. But remember, the entire cycle started because I was fed up, which lets me know, yeah, there was a problem. There was something going on. There was a need that I had, and something I did need to talk about, and that needed to be expressed. But because I made this huge mess with all my codependent issues, it's all murky and yucky. And the only thing I'm really understanding is, wow, you can't trust your gut. You can't trust that when you feel so certain and so strongly about your rights and what that person did to you, that you just don't speak up anymore, right? Because I learned the scariest thing I can do is set a boundary. Because every time I've tried to set a boundary, I get this. And this is a huge mess. And it makes me look dumb to the person I'm trying to recruit and then unrecruit. And then I look weak. You know, this is what I'm believing. I look weak to the person I try to set the boundary, and I just made a mess of that relationship, and now they don't trust me and they're still mad at me even though they said they forgave me, right? So this is what's being reinforced with me every time I try to set and hold a boundary. And it just like feeds itself until I quit trying. So when we come back, it's perfect timing. My dog's really going nuts. When we come back, we're going to do part 2, and then we're going to learn, how do we deal with this? Right? Now that we've been able to map this out, identify each of those phases, see what it looks like in terms of what you're doing, what you're thinking, and how you're feeling, now we can begin to deal with it so that we can learn how to set and hold a boundary in a healthy way, and we don't have to go through this whole nightmare every single time we try to set and hold a boundary. So take good care. Good luck in setting your boundaries, and I'm going to see you in the next one.